On this episode of AV Week, Logitech has a brand new soft codec interface, the rise of huddle spaces in AV, and the pros and cons of hiring out extra AV labor. All that and more. Next on AV Week.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is AV Week, episode 392, recorded Friday, March 1st, 2019. Blame Matt.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by
Sure, sound extraordinary.
And by Middle Atlantic, what great systems are built on. And by FSR.
This is AV Week, your weekly wrap-up of audio, visual, news, and information. My name is Tim Albright. I am your host. With
Not
us...
anymore, Tim.
No, it's our show now.
Let me at least do the introduction.
No, we've taken over. I am your host, Bradford Ben.
There you go.
With my sidekick, Matt D. Scott.
Hey, how you doing, Bradford?
And, of course, Uncle Richie, Rich Fergoza, holding us all together. Tim Albright is detained this week, pondering the topic of frames for projection screens.
He was very uptight about that, actually.
Yeah.
Very concerned that maybe there shouldn't be a frame in a boardroom on a projection screen.
I was going to ask Richie, Uncle Richie, is this something that some of your high-end residential clients might want?
A projection screen?
No, a frame projection
frame
around the projection screen.
When was actually the better question, Uncle Richie, is when was the last time you saw a residential high-end theater room with a projection screen that did not have a frame on it? When was the last time you used a drop down in high-end residential in a theater room?
A drop down screen in residential.
Any sort of pull down. Come on.
Oh, a manual pull down? I mean, like bringing the professor out and the AV cart kids.
Either or.
I got to say that probably a couple of years ago, I did a frameless projection screen that was inset, surrounded by mirrors. That was fun.
That'd be cool.
That was a whole lot of math and a whole lot of sweating.
So Tim, what stories do you actually want us to be talking about?
Thank you. I appreciate it. Well, first and foremost, our friends over at AV Magazine is talking about Logitech Tap and their new UI, which is interesting, the fact that they're going after this market. The Logitech Tap, at ISC, they introduced, it's a touch control display that makes collaboration rooms, quote unquote, easy to deploy and use. Tap is part of a pre-configured room solution for major collaboration platform providers such as Google, as well as Microsoft Teams and Zoom rooms. That's the one thing that's interesting about this is you've got Logitech going after these all-in-one soft codec systems, and they're not alone, right? There are other folks. Crestron has a solution for this. Several other peripheral companies, not that Crestron's a peripheral, but they have a solution for this. Bradford, in not just you work for a major end user, but you guys also obviously have office spaces. Is this something that makes sense? Is this a new market for manufacturers as well as integrators, putting these kind of all these turnkey solutions in kind of all in one box?
Yes and no.
Okay.
Allow me to explain.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a new market. It's a very good market because that is one of our biggest problems, not just at my company, at every company I've gone to that's tried to do web conferencing, that's trying to do this, is the who has the dongle, who's connecting, what number do I dial into, all this stuff. So the all-in-one appliance makes a lot of sense. The reason the Logitech one concerns me is because it does 3 systems. And it's like, no, I want something.
3 different systems.
3 different systems, not at once, but does 3 different systems. And it's like, no, I, as a end user, would much rather walk into a room and know, oh, this is a click share room. I plug in the USB and hit the button. And that's the only way I use it. This other one, this is a WebEx room. I have a WebEx Teams board over there. I pull out my laptop, I connect to the network, it does the ultrasonic pairing, it's done. Or it might have a WebEx Teams room panel on on the table that only does the WebEx Teams. It doesn't try to do everything else.
But hold on, you don't know if it can be locked down if it's only capable of doing all three. Maybe
Agreed. I haven't laid hands on it yet, but unlike Elton Brown, there are certain things that should be unitaskers, in my opinion. How long, and those of you who know me, how long did I carry a separate music player and mobile phone? For a very long time, because I couldn't find one that did both well. And what I'm worried about is a Logitech device. I have not touched it. I have not played with the GUI. I haven't tried to break anything on it yet. But I've just found from me using conference rooms as I'm traveling and going from room to room, like here, I picked a different room because it supported Zoom to be able to do this. As I travel around, I found that the biggest complaint that people have is, I just want it all to work the same. And I think that getting a Logitech panel that says, oh, I have a Logitech panel in this room, and I do this, and it's controlling a WebEx meeting, and then go to another room that has a Logitech panel with it, and it's a Zoom room, will get confusing. In addition to, I don't know what the GUI looks like. So I believe that conference rooms play a huge part in commerce, both for the AV industry and for those of us doing business. And I think our biggest miss is that we try to make one thing do too many things. And that's what scares me about the Logitech. Simple is good.
All right, Richie. Richie has spent the last couple of, I guess, month or so at the top of an impressive office building in San Francisco. Is this something that you've seen in your travels and in your when you're doing rolling up systems that makes a whole lot of sense, or is it the bigger the company, the more impressive they want their boardrooms?
Yeah, I mean, it's the bigger the company, the more sophisticated the boardroom, the least sophisticated the user.
Bingo. Thank you.
What we're dealing with, and I mean, it's we call them we in the old days we used to call them executive control systems for a reason. It was basically the big green button that says start meeting, and we still do it. I mean, we really do. What I've found over the years is it's not necessarily the type of system. Really what it comes down to is that there's so many choices now with soft codecs, right? That's the issue, is that, it's kind of like standards, right? There's so many to choose from now. When we were dealing with very specific video conference and audio conference over a POTS line or over an ISDN line, you only had X amount of people in there. And one of the things to consider is now that these items aren't exorbitantly expensive from a hardware standpoint, companies and CTOs and the executives and whoever is in the decision-making process settles in on some form of UC ecosystem. So whether it's WebEx, whether it's the Logitech, whether, they're Blue Jeans, any of those that are out there, you never know what they're going to be using. So what we're finding more is figuring out what the company is settling on for their collaboration software. And then it becomes a matter of, okay, well, does this do one of the systems well? Does it do one or the other? Do you have to bridge in some of the traditional hard codec functions along with the software codec functions?
And I have to do a quick question, Richie. First, may I call you Richie? But my second
Please
question,
approach the bench, sir.
Well, Your Honor, my first question is, how much of these big corporate boardrooms are you being asked, well, on my phone, I open the app of choice and I hit, make call or do video call and poof, it works. Are they comparing that to the experience in the big executive conference room, or is that not an issue at the level you're playing?
I think that I think that in the larger spaces, you've just got more stuff to deal with. When you're, and again, it's why has the huddle space become so popular and why has it exploded? It's because you can get a lot done in a small amount of real estate. And a lot of times I've seen it where it doubles up as somebody's cubicle. You basically, they're sitting on one side of the table and they bring 2 or 3 people over and they scooch over to the other side of the table and they plug in the USB and away they go. And so I'm finding that, the employers are with the huddle space view.
I'll tell you, my cube is that way. I have a table in my cube that I share with 4 people. That's the whole purpose of it, so we can share and work in there. But I was thinking, as we look at the displays and the communications, is how much the mobile device is driving this. And it sounds from your market that at the high end, it's the complexity of all the data needs that's still keeping it complex.
Yeah, and again, it does become the use of the room. You've got a far different user experience when you've got 2 to 3 people that you're dealing with in a room as opposed to 36. Yeah. Or if you've got an overflow room and you've got 36 in the main room and another 50 in an overflow room. So, it always comes back to, there's the use case, right? The huddle, the soft codec, the huddle space model is still going to be that 90-10 rule. The same thing you see with residential at this point, right? There's the do it with me model or the do it yourself model of these devices that are making inroads because of mobile. And they are changing the landscape in the upper echelon. Seeing that same thing in commercial and education and in network operations centers, there's always going to be that bubble up from mobile at this point. However, it depends on what reliability levels that you're looking for.
Let me ask you.
I have another question for you, Mr. Ritchie, sir. So as you're looking at these meeting rooms where you're saying you have the overflow room and it's a room with 36 people, how much of this do you think is starting to change the dynamics of a meeting? Because at least in the education market, if you record a classroom for distance learning, it's not the same experience for the far learner as having a dedicated studio for distance learning where there's no students in the room, so that way you're not interacting and reading the message. Do you think that's going to be a problem as you're doing these overflow rooms? In other words, I've been advocating for meetings I'm taking part in. Either we're all meeting via WebEx Teams or Zoom or whatever, or none of us are because it's unfair with all the side conversations that go on. Do you find that's an issue at all for the applications you're working with, or how do you address those issues?
I don't think we've had that issue because we've seen hybrids where we'll have 2 or 3 offices that are in. We'll see an overflow room. We'll see the main room. And what was it that one of the clients said is, honestly, we're only going to put the camera on the important people. And he meant it.
It's kind of what's happening here during the show. It's just you and me, Rich. I'm trying to box out Tim and Matt and just keep it between you and me.
Well, before we go too far with that, Matt, Richie made a point of saying, there are so many soft codecs to choose from. I was at Collaboration Week, New York, earlier this week, and something that he said I found actually a little shocking. There are 230 some odd soft codecs available today.
Yeah, but there's only 5 that matter.
But 230. 230, and I might give you 5 or 10 that are obviously industry market leaders on that.
That's also a misleading number though.
Why?
Because I've read some of these reports.
Yeah.
If you're listening to an MP3 on your laptop, that's a codec.
Yeah.
If you're listening to a FLAC file on your laptop, that's a soft codec.
This is video soft codecs, right? Video soft codecs. They were
video
saying
soft codecs for playing back a DVD.
No, for two-way communication.
I just wanted to make sure you clarified it.
Yeah, I'm clarifying. So for two-way video communication, there are 230. Actually, there was 236 or 37, I think, is what they were saying.
But why does that matter? Why does it matter?
Is that not? It's almost.
It's going to be like anything.
But Infocom in the last few years has kind of they've got their collaboration, they've got their UC space, right? And we're seeing more and more of these new folks that are coming in every year. You're going to have Cisco, right, which is hardware. Yeah. You're going to have Polycom, which is hardware and software both. But you're also going to start seeing Zoom there, right? You're going to
see Zoom. You're going to see High Five. You're going to see all of these different companies. But the big difference for our space and what matters to us is, can we support what our clients are asking for?
Can you?
I don't care if there's 500 soft codecs. What I care about is if my client comes to me and says, "Hey, I want a High Five room. Can you make this work?" we look at it and either say, yeah, of course we can, or maybe not. At the end of the day, it just comes back to knowing that you can take after your clients. And if it's something where you need to kind of try and steer them, or at least show them the reasons why you're recommending, in our case, Zoom over anything else, if you can outlay it and show them why, go for it.
Okay.
And hopefully they'll go your way. If they don't, you then have to make the decision of whether you want to try and support that and make it happen for them, or if you want to walk away from the client. But at the end of the day, the client's paying the bill. We're not in charge. We like to think we are, and we think we're special in our own world, but we're not. The client's paying the bill. If they want to use High Five instead of Cisco, even though they should be using Cisco, let them use High Five. Let them make the mistake.
As the client,
you can't push them so far.
Yeah.
Okay, so as the client, I disagree with you a little bit.
You're going to let me tell you what you need to get.
No, I care about how many different codecs there are, and I want there to be less. Here's the reason why. If you use codec number 237 and you want to have a meeting with me, I now have to go get something that works with codec 237. If not, codec 237 is a walkie-talkie without a receiver. It's kind of fun to run around and play with, but you can't talk to anybody.
That's not what I'm saying, though.
But that's what I'm saying is there are so many different protocols that do you buy WebEx? Do you buy Zoom? Do you buy High Five? Do you buy LifeSites? Do you buy? I'm fine. Yeah. Do you do Skype for Business? Do you do Microsoft Link, which is now Skype for Business? I'm fine. And I understand why companies want proprietary. But me coming into a conference room or setting up a meeting with a vendor, we now tell our vendors, this is how we're going to be interacting with you, because of having so many different versions of software that we were trying to support in our rooms. It got to be crazy. So it's kind of like the phone system.
But that's also...
Could you imagine if you had 4 different phones on your desk all the time? One worked with the
different people, yeah.
Yeah, one called POTS, one called SNOTs, one called TOTS. You know, it just gets.
But Bradford, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, you as the end user, you need to make the decision of what you want.
Right, and I have.
And whatever that is, and I've had countless conversations with clients who say, "Ooh, we really want to do, for example, Skype." And I say, "Okay, so who do you VC with? Who are you trying to talk to? Is it in your own office? Are you talking to someone else?" We had a client who had a contract with a company that's not far away from you, maybe considered one of your competitors.
There is no competition to me.
You know what I mean? Not you, the company you're with.
Yeah, personally, yeah.
Our local company was adamant that they were going to use Skype for Business. And the only reason they needed VC was to talk to that company across from you.
Yes, I know where, yeah.
And I said, you need to talk to them and find out what they want to talk to you on. And then that's what we will put in, because that's why you're doing this. It doesn't matter what you want in this case. You need to have something that you can talk to whoever your client or whoever you need to VC with. And
so
again, that comes back to us doing our job.
Right. So let me follow this on. Let me follow this on. You have more than one client.
Yes.
Which system do you put in?
Well, hang on.
And that's what bothers me.
He's already said
you've got to make that decision.
He has to talk with his clients and say yes or no. We can support this. Matt, to your point, what are your steps? What do you go in? Let's say that somebody throws a curveball and it's a soft codec you've never heard of before. Then what are your steps to say to go through and go, these are the check boxes that we have to check off to say, yes, we can support this. Yes, we can put the system in, and yes, it'll be a success.
It always becomes something of, as you go through that discovery with your client, you need to find out what they want to use internally, what they think they're going to use externally, who their main people are that they want to talk to, and you start down that road. When you get that call of, hey, we want to connect with these people who are using this, so we need to support, 237, then we have to take that back if they want us to. A lot of times they kind of want to figure that out themselves. But when they come to us and say, hey, we just got asked to use 237, can you help us with soft codec 237? We take it back, we look at it, we start to do some due diligence to make sure that A, it'll work with all of their existing equipment. B, what's the cost of implementing that change or that software change to touch panels or whatever has to happen. Then we look at the security side of it and make sure that it's a secure codec that does not cause problems within their environment, because we've seen that where someone has this random off the shelf and it wants access to everything before it'll run. We've got to do that due diligence and then come back and present a report of here's the challenges, here's what we can do, and most importantly, this is what it's going to cost you. Because a lot of times when somebody brings that obscure codec, it's only because that's what they've decided they want to use. It's not that secondary client of our client is sold on that. It's just something that they're using.
So let me ask you a question, Matt. You're a small business owner, hoping to be a big business owner someday. Same thing with you, Uncle Richie. Are you now spending an inordinate amount of time concentrating on conference rooms instead of houses of worship or other things because of the fact that you have to do that due diligence every time instead of just going, oh, it's a phone line, I plug it in, poof, it's done? Is this detracting you from other avenues of revenue and other parts of the AV industry?
So let me jump on this first, Richie, if you don't mind. We try not to. And what I mean by that is we have the set codecs that we prefer to support, and we prefer to allow our, and it sounds terrible to say it like that, but allow our clients to use when they want something random or weird or off the shelf that we have never dealt with. There's a cost associated with us doing that due diligence. As far as the second part of your question and going into whether it detracts from what we do, it can if you let it get away from you. But at the end of the day, that's a business decision based on where you, A, feel you have the most potential for growth, B, what your skill set is, and C, making sure that the revenue is there to support it. We've gotten away from, just to speak for our Resi division for a minute, we've gotten away from, we no longer offer any sort of like traditional smart home basic products because there is no money in that for us. We have gone down a different path in residential with a couple of things that we're doing. On our commercial side, we still support boardrooms. We still do conference systems and things such as that. But the primary part of our corporate commercial business is now networking and IT. IT has become a much bigger portion of that, previous corporate environment that was VC. In terms of our house of worship, we're still doing as much house of worship as we've ever done in the past. We've had some role changes that have kind of changed the way that we approach that. But what I do notice, which I think is kind of what you're alluding to, there's a significant push within the industry and within the channel that, AV, as we see it, commercial AV as we see it, is mostly UC and conference rooms and that corporate environment. It is not PA. It is not live sound. It is not rental stage. It is not house of worship. The downside of that is that we're now seeing a lot of, in our main driver, house of worship, we're seeing a lot of really bad house of worship. Really bad. Because the skill set is not there anymore for a lot of integrators. And that's not necessarily bad, but it a lot of times leads to a bad result. And we had a project that we did some consulting on for an integrator friend of mine, and he's up against a security company for a medium-sized house of worship project. He's quoting against an alarm company. It's a shame. And he's 3 times as much because, well, they're an alarm company. And that's no disrespect to them, but they are so far outside of their lane.
No.
Richie?
Well, I'm all about wherever the collection plate goes. So,
We are all coin operated.
We are all coin operated.
We're all coin operated.
Can I pay you in prayers?
That's it. Yeah, the early Lent. Yeah, the AV Lent special. So, honestly, I'm finding myself being drawn back more into commercial than I have in years. And I think right now, ironically enough, it's a right time, just for the industry, just for the way that people are working differently. There are, just with the aspect of telecommuting at this point, there's more of a need for this type of conferencing solutions and huddle space solutions and connecting solutions, the whole point of unified communications, right? So, we're seeing it even in residential, where we're setting up spaces that are, quasi meeting spaces inside a home that do have cameras and do have a soft codec and do have, better microphones, and have the ability for people. And especially, the one thing that we always forget, and one of the reasons why we've been seeing kind of this uptick, is traffic sucks, especially in major metropolitan areas. I know for a fact that in the Silicon Valley, to get 30 miles from here to a meeting on a good day will take me 90 minutes. On a bad day, it could take me over 2.5 hours, 30 to 40 miles. And that's not uncommon in Los Angeles, in New York, here in the Bay Area, other segments of the East Coast. It's definitely there. And so, to answer your question is, what are we finding? Well, we're looking at all of the options where, we can provide that peace of mind where people are going to see the value in not having to be in a car, going back and forth. And that's really what it comes down to is, do you have to be in a car? Is your employer forcing you to come into an office to sit with everybody and look at them face to face? If they're not, if they're more flexible, and you're seeing that more with tech to begin with, because it is a different way of operating to begin with, we're seeing the growth. And so where I'm just, brother's got to eat. So I'm jumping right on it whenever I see it.
All right.
Now have I seen churches? No, but that's never been, that's never been my wheelhouse. It's cool. And I can appreciate it. But, in that respect, we're focusing on kind of staying within our lane with those spaces.
No, absolutely. All right, guys. Last story we're going to cover here is from Innovate on the Net. UK audio-visual hire specialist Smart AV has acquired another technical services provider called InSync. Quote unquote, the acquisition enables Smart AV to offer a range of services to production companies as well as design agencies and builders. Matt, I'll start with you, and then Richie, and then Bradford. I want to end with you on this one.
That's so unsafe.
I know. He's the end user. That's why I kind of want to end with him. How when you guys go out and you have a job, and let's say that there's a job that might be bigger than your current staffing can handle. When you go out and you hire some of these service providers, these folks, what is it that you're looking for? Are you looking for certifications? Are you looking for, you have a personal relationship with maybe your account manager or the person who owns the company? What are you looking for when you're looking to ramp up and hire, seasonal help or project-based help?
Competency.
But how do you define that?
That's what I can't find.
But here's the thing though, without seeing these people, you don't know these people from anybody else. You're contacting this company. They're sending you, a dozen folks to help you on a job. You don't know them until they get there. How do you have the confidence of their competency before they get there?
All of the providers and friends of mine that own these companies or work for these companies are going to hate this answer, but it's totally trial and error, because we have gone through, and this is something that we use a lot, and it's part of the way that our house of worship business has changed. We routinely hire third-party labor to come in and help facilitate installations and things such as that. And it is something where, to be honest, we start and try to ensure that the first couple of days, all you do is pull wire. There's nothing technical. There's nothing overly challenging. So we can kind of oversee the group of people coming in and go, okay, you're good, you're good, you're good. You're not, go home. And it sounds really crass, but we've hired personnel that have a laundry list of certifications that should never touch anything. We've had people that don't have a clue in on paper how to do what we do, and they show up and they've got a great attitude, a great work ethic, and they're fantastic. And then often I try and hire them away but it's literally trial and error, because what you'll find is whether they have the right certifications or not, a lot of times it just comes down to how they deal with whoever's managing that project. Whether in my company's case, it's myself or one of my guys, it's making sure that those personnel are good and fit well, just like you would when you're normally hiring an employee. That fit has to be there. Otherwise, their technical skills, to a degree, don't really matter.
Yeah. Richie, same kind of question. Rich primarily does a lot of programming, but he's a digital concierge, so he consults a lot as well. When you're looking to add bodies to your jobs, what are you looking for?
Well, first off, what we would hope for is that we would, we belong to these associations and we participate with these associations in the hopes that we can support them and have a balanced, or at least a somewhat level playing field, at least a minimum threshold, right? So CTS credentials, if it is a residential project, if they are a CDM member, CDS certified, if they got some background, the certs and the specs and everything that comes, it's kind of like insurance. Everybody has insurance. People have a minimum threshold of the jobs coming in. That's what you're expecting for. But, to allude to what Matt said, part of it is trial and error. Part of it is who you know in terms of the companies, what kind of relationship you have with them, the quality of work you've seen before. And a lot of the technical service company, unless it's a union-backed company that's being brought into an area, you're going to wind up having some form of experience with a company, or you're basically throwing a Hail Mary, and like you've got in over your head, or you've got a deadline, and literally you're looking for any bodies in that region. And that's where the trial and error comes in sometimes, where you have to hope that there is a service company in that region to begin with. Obviously nobody wants to go to Canada, so it's really tough for Matt to begin with.
Wait up. I'd rather be in Canada. not with Matt, just I'd rather be in Canada.
I love you too.
But we have, and we've worked with companies. There are companies that are private. Obviously mostly you're going to see it in the commercial space, but you do see a bit in the residential space, but those guys are mostly freelancers. You're not necessarily going to see a team of 20 guys show up to deploy a house. You will see that in terms of, an office building or a university or something like that, but it's also some very specific work, and sometimes it's a matter of finding, do you have people who can read blueprints and schematics? If they can do that and they can count and, work with a labeler,
can you read a tape measure?
It's a step in the right direction. And I think there's a value for it because, again, for integrators, and because of the way the margins are changing, you can't necessarily afford to stay staffed up all the time or keep that business rolling to there. And so I see that there's going to be an increase in that over time, where there's going to be the ability for, a journeyman audio video technician. I know it's one fellow I met years ago. His entire gig is setting up on demand, basically digital signage weather displays. Mm-hmm. So he's got like hundreds of these little bright sign boxes and displays, and he carts them up. And if there's a convention or an event or something, he shows up and sets up the bright signs, and that's his gig, his day in, day out gig. And I was like, that's pretty cool. You get called in. So there's always a niche for something like that. But I think in the larger services, absolutely. If you're a smaller company and you do wind up getting, an add-on for a corporation you're already working with, then you got to staff up and you got to hope for the best. And, obviously in commercial, you start with the CTS credentials, I think, and then you go from there.
All right, Bradford, you are, as you've said at one point in time to me, you are the most important person on this call because you're an end user. So as an end user and as somebody who puts together rules, is this okay? Is hiring folks and bringing extra labor in okay? Or do you want somebody who has, the 100 people that it takes to do that job? You want those same 100 people employed by that integrator?
Both.
Okay.
I understand that companies are going to staff up and staff down. Certain parts of a job are not high skill items. I don't say that it's no skill, but there's a different skill set between programming and pulling cable. Pulling cable, you still need knowledge. You still need to know bend radiuses and pull strength and all that. But what I'm more concerned about is when the job's done and I have a service call, odds are it's going to be about someone who put a semicolon where there should have been a semicolon in the software. And to me, that's more important. In my personal opinion, I'm not speaking on behalf of my employer or anyone else. In my personal opinion, that is the important thing, is that your core talent, your designers, your specifiers, your commissioning people, those people need to be your core team, because if all that you're doing is subbing another company, A, it means I'm not going to get the same service every time. And B, as an end user who likes having more money to write checks with, why would I pay a markup for you to hire other labor if they don't bring a specialized skill? Now, like I said, not everything needs to be on staff. We understand things keep switching back and forth, and there's lean times and fat times. We understand that. I understand that. However, the idea of I'm going to hire Omega AV, and this week I get great service. Woohoo, hit it out of the park. Everyone was nice, polite, etc. And the next project, I'm going to hire Omega AV, and they're different subs. And this feels more like a second-class system. Now, I don't blame Matt. It's just that's the challenge you have with having subs.
You're going to blame Matt. Trust me on that.
Everybody's going to blame.
Everybody's going to blame
Matt. Yeah, it's cool.
Also, at the same point, I believe Mr. Ferragosa owes an apology to the venerable statesman of audio, Mr. Brock McGinnis, for lumping in Matt as the representative of Canada for everything. But my point being is that as the company, you are taking on more liability, and I think you realize if you're subcontracting. And as the owner, as someone writing a check, once again, my personal opinion, not speaking on behalf of my company, none of that stuff. If I'm paying you and you're subbing it, what happens if you don't pay your subcontractor for whatever reason? What happens if there are problems between you and the subcontractor agreeing on terms? That impacts my project. Now, having said that, it's a different game, a different situation if you come to me as an owner, and I have this exact same thing when I pull wire at my house, or have, even when, you do some basic stuff, like if I'm getting cable pulled to my house, is it Spectrum or is it a Spectrum contractor? That's a different thing. But if you come to me and go, I don't have the staffing for this, I'm going to sub out to do blah, 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 and here's how I'm going to verify their work. We're both walking down hand in hand, understanding. So you're subbing out the guy who's going to put in all the Cat5 and terminate it and do all of your IP routing. Great. How are you going to back it up? Oh, you as your company is going to certify it and run and check the ports, make sure you have connectivity. Simpler situation. And while yes, I work for a multinational company that has hundreds of thousands of employees, but to me, this is just as much of an issue for the small mom and pops or just mom companies, where the mom company hires a small, someone to pull cable for them, and there's a problem because the cable was pinched. It's the small company that's doing the service, taking the warranty hit, the reputation hit, not the person who pulled the cable. But if the ownership company, the person signing the check, knows, the owner of that company didn't pull the cable, it was a subcontractor, they know who to call to get it fixed, but they're not going to blame the owner of that small mom company.
Well, and I think that brings up a discussion that we don't have time for today, of at what point do you have to disclose that? There are a lot of situations where you don't need to disclose if you're bringing in a subcontractor for this, or you're outsourcing programming or things such as that. It becomes that.
It's a fuzzy line.
It is.
But I will say, for instance, I work for a huge company. We have a huge contract that gives you the guidelines of when you have to disclose it.
Me as
an end user, I want to know that when the programming stops working and I pick up the phone and call you, the SLA says that I'll get service level agreement, that I'll get 4-hour service, 24-hour service, 8-hour service. If that's met, it doesn't bother me. If it's, oh, my subcontractors can't get to it for another 2 years, 2 weeks, 2 days, that's where it impacts my experience. And I think we need to be more transparent about that as an industry.
And I would argue that that is an integrator not doing his job properly, whether he's subconning or not. It's his responsibility to deal with it.
It comes down to the contract, but that is all the time we have, guys. Thank you so much. Mr. Bradford Penn, how do people get a hold of you?
You can usually find me on the Twitters at Bradford Ben with 2 N's. You can find me at AVNation.tv, where I'm usually making sure to keep the place working. Of course, you'll be able to find me at Infocom coming up. I'm doing a couple of really cool things with AVNation that you're not going to want to miss. We've debated about having a barbecue at my place, but Tim says he's not going to do it, so we're out of plans for that. Any suggestions, please let us know. But basically, if you Google me, you can find me. You oftentimes, like I said, can find me making fun of Tim and the Chicago Bears. However, now that football season is over, also it's over for 2020 already, I found out, for the Bears. I'll be making fun of his Blues, but because my Devils are doing so much worse, I can't really run smack on him.
Yeah, we'll actually make the playoffs this year. You won't.
Yeah, if you don't find me, you can usually find me teasing Mr. Matt Scott on Twitter. So, Matt, how do people get a hold of you?
You can find me on Twitter at Matt D. Scott and most other social platforms. But more importantly, please stop by AVNation.tv where you find my show.
You have to give Rich.
Hey, Richie.
You have to pass the potato.
on the Facebooks and
we're doing the Brady Bunch. I don't know if I'm up top or I don't know if we're in a quad screen or not.
You're down there.
Okay, great.
Richie, if people want to connect with you, where can they find you?
You can find me on the interwebs. Type in my name, Rich Fregosa. But you can also find me on Twitter at rfregosa, fregosadesign.com. But first and foremost, absolutely find us here on avnation.tv, here on AVWeek with my good friend Matt Scott. Also on A State of Control, our show about the control system programming industry with my very good friend Steve Greenblatt, who is the hostess with the mostest. But obviously, please visit us here at avnation.tv. We love seeing you, and my mother will thank you.
All right. I think they're going to let me talk now. Don't follow me.
If people want to connect with you,
don't follow me.
They find you?
But go by the website, avnation.tv, as everybody here has said. Actually, Matt is joining me and our buddy Joe Whitaker and Emil in a couple of weeks on a webinar on user-centric design. So check that out and register for that. Also check out Matt's show and Rich's show. And we have actually a brand new show I want you to check out as well if you're into digital signage or getting into that industry. It's called the Digital Signage Digest. It's a monthly look at the news and the issues surrounding digital signage hosted by Lenore. Also check that out as well. All that and more at avnation.tv, avnation.tv. Thanks so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. That's all the time we have for AV Week. Can I tell you something that I might have to pull and record?
Yeah.
You said the word process twice.
Did I?
You did.
That's a shame. Been hanging out with y'all too much.
And there was no way in the world I was going to stop you.
Mitchell, you burn this tape. Burn it.